Chapter 3 of the Coming of the Elves and the Captivity of Melkor. The beginning of this chapter reminds us that now that the lamps are gone and the light of the two trees doesn't reach the east, Middle-earth is still in darkness, in a twilight under the stars. And only Yavanna and Orome really ever actually go there. Melkor's really the guy who has the run of the place right now, with all of his monsters and nasty little creatures running around. Like I said before, he's got his demons, his Balrogs, up in his primary northern fortress of Utumno. Their hearts were of fire, but they were cloaked in darkness, and terror went before them. They had whips of flame. And he has his lieutenant, Sauron, posted near the northwestern shore, in a secondary fortress called Angband. Meanwhile, the Valar hold a council regarding the scary state that Middle-earth is in, and Mandos, the doomsman of the Valar, says the elves will awaken very soon, but they are supposed to do it beneath the stars, and not in light. So, Varda decides to make some new constellations, and this work is the greatest of all the Valar since their coming to Arda. And she does this by taking silver dew from the vats beneath Telperion, the tree, and using it to make the brightest stars. And just as she finishes the final stars, the firstborn children of Ilúvatar wake up. The elves come to life, and the first thing they see is the stars, so that's why they love Varda the most out of all the Valar. They wake up next to a bay called Cuivienyarna, on the shore of the inland sea of Helkar. The book kind of implies that that place doesn't exist anymore. They live there for a while, and during that time they develop language and start naming things. They call themselves Quendi, which means those who speak with voices, because they don't meet anything else that can talk or sing like they can. But then Orome becomes the first Vala to come across the elves, which makes sense because he's always out and about hunting throughout Middle-earth. This is when he calls them Eldar, which, if you recall from a couple videos ago, means people of the stars. At first, some elves hide from him or just flat out run away. This is because long before Orome discovers them, Melkor had found out about them and sent his evil minions to terrorize any elves who strayed too far away from the group. And he spread his rumors about a frightening horseman and may have sent evil riders to scare the elves. But the ones who are brave enough to stay quickly realize that Orome is from Aman, the Blessed Realm, and not from Utumno. Of the elves who were unlucky enough to be kidnapped by Melkor's servants and brought to Utumno, he tortures them over a period of time until they become orcs. Because remember, Melkor can't actually make any being himself because he doesn't have the secret fire, the flame imperishable. So the only way that he can quote-unquote create beings is really just by stealing life that already exists, in this case elves, and twisting it to his own will. By doing so, he mocks Ilúvatar's creations. So this is so different from Aule and Yavanna, who were only successful in creating beings because they got the permission of Ilúvatar, and they were only trying to bring glory to his world. They weren't trying to mock his children. And it's ultimately Ilúvatar who gives dwarves and ents souls. Thus, the creation of the orcs, this, it may be, was the vilest deed of Melkor, and the most hateful to Ilúvatar. Meanwhile, Orome rides back to Valinor and tells the Valar about the elves and about Melkor's usual mucking about. And Ilúvatar tells Manwë that the Valar need to fight Melkor to regain mastery of Arda for the sake of the elves. So, they do. They storm the northwest of Middle-earth, and Melkor's servants flee to Utumno. They then set up a safeguard around Cuivienyarna, and the elves don't really know what's going on. They never actually see this great battle. The siege of Utumno lasts a long time. It's kind of a tough nut to crack, and the siege is so destructive that the earth shakes, the shape of Middle-earth changes, and the great sea Betelgeuse gets bigger. Now remember, the earth is still flat within a globe at this time. Just keep that in mind. The Valar tear the roof off of Utumno, and Melkor hides in the deepest pit that he can find, but Tulkas wrestles him out, and the Valar chain him up. The Valar are not able to find all the demons and evil creatures that are still hiding or that ran away, including Sauron. So he's still running around. He's still at large. They haven't caught him, but they caught Melkor. So they bring Melkor to Valinor, and they imprison him in the halls of Mandos for 3 ages, which in our years would be about 2,875 years. So it's a really long jail sentence. Then they hold a council again and talk about what to do about the elves. Ulmo says they should just be left alone to live in Middle-earth and do their own thing, but the majority of the Valar disagree, and they want the elves to come to Aman to live with them. So, the Valar summon the elves to Aman, but the elves are pretty afraid and filled with dread because thus far they had only known of the Valar in their wrath during the war and the siege of Utumno. So Orome goes to Cuivienyarna in person, and he chooses 3 ambassadors to go to Valinor and check it out first. These ambassadors are called Ingwe, Finwe, and Elwe. And they go to Valinor, and they see how wonderful it is and how amazing it is. They behold the light of the 2 trees and see how beautiful they are. And then Orome brings them back to Cuivienyarna, and they tell all the elves, hey, you guys, you gotta come to Aman. It's great. Now, right about here, this brings us to a very important concept to understand in the history and origins of the elves. The sundering of the elves. In other words, the separation of different elf groups. And it's 2 groups right now. Those who are willing to go to Aman, and those who are unwilling to go to Aman. Now, the unwilling, who right from the get-go do not have any interest in moving away from Cuivienyarna, those are known as the Avari. But the ones who are willing to go to Aman, from now on, they're going to be known as Eldar. So remember how before Eldar was used for all elves? Well, at this first sundering of the elves, now we look at the word Eldar from now on till the rest of throughout all the books, they are the ones who originally answer the summons. So at this point, your head might be reeling at all the new names being rapidly thrown at you. There is a chart at the back of your Silmarillion book that lays out all the names of the groups of elves and the paths of their sundering. So in case you ever get confused, you can go to the back of your book. So back in chapter 1, we saw some brief descriptions of different elf groups and the Valar who they learn from. Well, here we can finally get into detail about them. Hooray! So the first group of the willing and the smallest group are called the Vanyar, the fair elves. They were all blonde, they're all light hair color. And they are led by Ingwe, who is actually the High King of all the elves. And the Vanyar are the most beloved of Manwe and Varda, and they learn poetry from Manwe because he delights in it. And the second group is a bit larger. They are called the Noldor, meaning deep elves, because they have a lot of wisdom. And they're led by Finwe. And they're friends of Aule. They're most skilled in anything craft-related, building, sewing, drawing, carving, making gemstones, and in languages and their writing systems. And the third group, which is the largest group, are the Teleri. And that just means the last ones, or reluctant. They're kind of the most reluctant to leave. And they actually have 2 kings, brothers, Elwe and Olwe. Because the group is so big, they needed 2 kings. And they learn much from Ulmo, and they love the water, especially the sea. And when they finally get to Aman, they're nicknamed the Sea Elves. They're also great singers, and the book often talks about there being music in the sound of water, so I think there's a natural connection there with singing and water. I think that's cool. Later on, they learn to become master shipbuilders. So let me just say here that not all the elves who are willing to go to Aman actually make it there. There's a few drop off along the way. The elves who do make it to Aman are called the Kalakwendi, which means light elves, because they've seen the light of the two trees. You might also see the term high elves sometimes. That's referring to the Kalakwendi. That's referring to any elf who actually saw the light of the two trees of Valinor. And the elves who never see the two trees are called the Morikwendi, or dark elves. So the dark elves not only include the Avari, who never followed the summons in the first place, but it also includes the Umanyar, which just means those elves who are not of Aman. It's elves who originally followed the summons, but for various reasons never quite made it out of Middle-earth. Fun fact, this concept of light and dark elves is also seen in Norse mythology. That's interesting. Maybe that's another source of inspiration. So this journey westward, it takes many years, partly because the elves are amazed by everything they see and they want to explore Middle-earth. But also because it's a difficult path, and Orome keeps coming and going, like he keeps disappearing and reappearing. Eventually, they get to the great river Anduin and the Misty Mountains, also known as the Hithaiglir. These names should sound familiar. You saw them in Lord of the Rings. The Vanyar and the Noldor pass over the river and the mountains, but the Teleri linger a bit. So as the Teleri are lingering, there's a breakaway group from them. Okay, this is the second sundering of the elves. And this breakaway group is called the Nandor, led by Lenwe. And they go south along the great river, and people of the Nandor eventually become the most learned of all elves regarding plants and animals. And fun fact, they are also known as Sylvan elves or wood elves, and it's these elves who go to eventually live in Mirkwood and Lothlorien. And then eventually, Lenwe's son Denethor leads a breakaway group from the Nandor, and this group goes west into the region of Osiriand in eastern Beleriand. This group is called the Laikwendi, or Green Elves. Okay, so all of the names that I just named, you can find those in that chart in the back of your book. So now you know what's Laikwendi, what's Nandor, what are all these names? Okay. Meanwhile, while the Teleri are still lingering east of the Misty Mountains, the Vanyar and Noldor get to the shores of Beleriand, the westernmost part of Middle-earth. It's in the northwest of Middle-earth. But they're really afraid. They see the ocean, and it's quite terrifying. So they kind of fall back a little into the forests and surrounding areas. So Orome leaves them, yet again, to go talk to Manwe about what to do. They're too scared to go anywhere. And meanwhile, the Teleri finally get over the Misty Mountains and enter into Beleriand, but they don't quite get to the shore. Okay, that was a lot of information, so quick recap. We already know that the word Kwendi refers to the entire race of elves. We know that Eldar are the elves who followed the original summons to come west into Aman from the shores of Cuivienyarna. We know that the Avari are those elves who flat out refuse the summons right from the get-go. The Vanyar are the first and smallest group of Eldar. The Noldor are the second group of Eldar. And the Teleri are the last and largest group of Eldar. The Nandor are the Teleri breakaway group that stays east of the Misty Mountains. They eventually become the elves of Mirkwood and Lothlorien. And the Laikwendi are a subgroup of the Nandor, who eventually go west into Beleriand and settle in the region known as Osiriand. And we know that the elves who go to Aman and see the light of the two trees are called Calaquendi, or High Elves. And the elves who never see the two trees are Moriquendi, or Dark Elves. Umanyar are the Eldar who never make it to Aman. They remain in Middle-earth. And we're going to talk about the Sindar in the next chapter. Oh boy, more names. Don't worry, you can do it.